Think about this. According to CNN, a Japanese court ruled that it is unconstitutional to require transgender sterilization. Japan never required trans people to be sterilized. But of course, in this CNN article written by Jessie, Yeung and Francesca, Annio, that's not exactly what they want us to believe. In this episode, we'll explore dishonesty in the media and how this type of reporting makes us question the advocacy of laws and classifications that protect vulnerable people. If you think these conversations are as fun as I do, hit those like and subscribe buttons. My name is Chris, and this is The Think Report. According to the CNN article, Japan's top court has ruled that a government requirement for transgender people to be sterilized before they could legally be recognized was unconstitutional, in a victory for the country's LGBTQ community years in the making. Under a law enacted 20 years ago, transgender individuals who want their identity documents amended must have been diagnosed with gender identity disorder, be at least 18 years old, be unmarried, and without any underage children. They must also have genital organs resembling those of the opposite sex and have no reproductive capacity. That means they must have undergone invasive procedures, including sterilization and plastic surgery. Half of this is true. The other half is quite dishonestly worded, specifically the part about the requirement for them to be sterilized. Now, I have to admit that I am reading a translated version of Japanese law, so there is a small chance that I've misinterpreted something. However, I wouldn't be saying it here if I wasn't really sure that I had all the facts right. CNN, as well as other major news publishers like Reuters, The Guardian, the CBC, and the Associated Press, claim that in order for a trans person to change their documented gender, they needed to meet the following criteria. Number 1, to be diagnosed with gender identity disorder. Number 2, to be 18 years old. Number 3, to be unmarried. Number 4, to be without children. And number 5, they must also have genital organs resembling those of the opposite sex. All of the above is true, but CNN, The Guardian, and other left-leaning publishers squeezed one additional criteria. CNN states they must also have genital organs resembling those of the opposite sex and have no reproductive capacity. That means they must have undergone invasive procedures, including sterilization and plastic surgery. Although sterilization is one of the resulting effects of genital transition, it's not a specific criteria within the bill. In fact, if a trans person only has themselves sterilized, they won't qualify under the old law. But adding that phrase to the article intentionally makes it seem like the government is requiring them to be sterilized, implying that they're unfit to procreate in Japan, which is not the truth. It would be like if your parents asked you to get a haircut, and you go to the barber and say that your parents don't like your hair. That's not what your parents said and could be considered a dishonest take on your parents' request. The same thing is happening in the media. Nowhere in the Japanese law does it say that trans people must be sterilized. It says you must have sex change surgery, yet journalists intentionally phrase the article to mislead us. They're liars. They have a weak argument and therefore lie to us to get us to accept their claim. I don't like to be lied to, and I'm sure you don't like it either. According to Gallup research, distrust in the media is at an all-time high. It's articles like this that are almost exclusively the reason that the majority of Americans don't trust the articles that come from traditionally reputable publishers like CNN. CNN is no better than the tabloids. Think about that. One of the most prolific international publishers has intentionally reduced their company to a sensationalized tabloid, no better than the Inquirer. What a shame. Something else that struck me as strange in the Gallup study was that if you break down the results by political affiliation, there is a generous difference between the amount of trust Democrats and Republicans lend to the media. This is truly confusing to me. The article we're critiquing has been so obviously sensationalized to the point of being untrue. Spotting these types of articles has more to do with one's ability to criticize the world and follow the reasoning of an author's argument than your political affiliation. This is a puzzle for another day. Intersectionality is regarded as creating overlapping, interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. It's a theory with little good quality qualitative research to support or undermine it, yet it seems to be the backbone for why vulnerable groups stick together. It's why LGBTQ supports Palestine even though it's illegal to be gay in Palestine. It's why feminists support transgender people even though trans women are a direct threat to women's rights, sports, and safe places.
Incredible moment. Fight breaks out over pride flag at the pro-Palestine protests. This is what we were talking about at the event yesterday, where part of it, people shouting jihad and whatnot, some incredibly anti-Semitic signs going on and whatnot, police doing nothing. But there's a clip that went viral today of someone put up a LGBTQ plus flag. And then, guess what? Some Islamic fundamentalists, or we don't know if they were, I'm assuming they were, pulled it down and ripped it off and ran off with it.
The Japanese law to allow someone to change their documented gender after they surgically transition seems quite liberal, actually. Think about it. In spite of an individual's DNA, Japan will allow the change of sex on their personal identification for those who have surgically transitioned. It actually seems quite reasonable, and whether or not you agree with it, quite progressive. However, the new law allows an individual to change their documented sex by simply requesting it. No longer do they need to surgically transition. You can just say you're something different. Sounds like Japan is following suit with Canada, the UK, and the US. What if I say I'm Japanese? Do they have to issue me a passport? I wouldn't even need to learn the language or even visit Japan. I can just identify as such and they'll update my documentation. It seems like the same principle, no? In Canada and the US, there are special protections for certain groups, including Native Americans and Native Canadians. They have their own sovereign reserves. They don't pay taxes, their tribes receive funding from the government, and a variety of other benefits of First People. But what if I identify as a First Person? I mean, I love the outdoors and being in nature. I enjoy hunting and fishing, and I appreciate all that nature and land has to offer and teach us. Does that make me a first person? In our reality, no. But in the world that our regulators and justices are creating for us, yes. We can identify however we want. If anyone can identify as Native American, then we aren't protecting Native Americans. If anyone can identify as a woman, then how are we protecting women and girls? If anyone can identify as a child, then how are we protecting children? These classifications mean something. The LGBTQ community won the right to gay marriage in the early 2000s. Did they win because they're just like everyone else? No, of course not. They won because of who they are, not in spite of it. The labels we put on each other have tremendous meaning. We use them to protect each other, to learn from each other, and to communicate. Think about that.